ready to unlock a secret code that everyone uses.
Sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
It's body language. You know those unspoken signals, those little tells that reveal what we're really thinking even when we don't mean to?
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
And we're diving deep into an article called 23 Essential Body Language Examples and Their Meanings. It's like a crash course in speed reading people.
And why is this important? Why should we care about these secret signals?
Well, because actions often speak louder than words, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you could walk into a room and instantly tell who's engaged, who's feeling anxious, or who's about to bolt for the door.
That would be like having a superpower. Sign me up.
Exactly. So this article breaks body language down into two main categories, open and closed. Think of it like a traffic signal. Green means go, red means stop.
Makes sense. So green light cues, what are we looking for?
Well, one that's both subtle and powerful is the eyebrow flash. That split-second eyebrow raise people do when they see someone they recognize or something catches their eye. It's a nonverbal hello or I see you.
I've definitely noticed that.
Yeah.
But is it really universal?
It's not just a human thing. Primates do it too. It's a primal greeting, hardwired into our DNA.
Wow, fascinating. You'd think with all our modern forms of communication, those ancient signals wouldn't matter as much.
You'd think so, but we're still wired for them. Take the handshake, for example.
Oh, the handshake. Don't get me started on bad handshakes.
I know, right? But a good handshake, a firm grip, good eye contact, it instantly conveys confidence and respect.
It's amazing how much we communicate in those first few seconds.
And this article breaks it down even further. There are actually 7 key elements of a perfect handshake.
7. Like what?
Well, for starters, the angle of your hand matters, and you should always match the other person's grip strength. You don't want to be crushing bones, but you also don't want to offer a limp hand.
That makes sense. It's about finding that balance.
Exactly. And a slight forward lean shows you're present and engaged.
It's like you're saying, I'm here, I'm interested in what you have to say, without actually saying a word.
Now, while we're on the topic of subtle cues, have you ever noticed how people sometimes unconsciously mirror each other's body language?
Oh, absolutely. Like when you're deep in conversation and you both shift your weight or cross your legs at the same time.
Researchers call that authentic mirroring, and studies show it can actually increase liking and trust.
Seriously. So if I want to build rapport with someone, I should subtly mimic their movements.
Don't overdo it. No one wants to feel like they're being mocked. It's all about being subtle. But yeah, if someone leans in while they're talking and you subtly lean in too, it creates a sense of connection.
Like you're on the same wavelength.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot. And speaking of sweet spots, let's talk about eye contact.
Oh, I can already see where this is going.
Too little eye contact and you seem disinterested. Too much, and you're practically staring into their soul.
Definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So what's the magic number? How much eye contact is enough, but not too much?
Well, research suggests that maintaining eye contact for about 30% of the time during a conversation is ideal for building rapport and trust.
30%. Got it.
Yeah.
I'll be sure to time myself. Just kidding. But seriously, it's fascinating how even something as simple as eye contact can have such a big impact.
Absolutely. And it's not just about how we use our bodies, it's also about the objects around us. Did you know that even something as small as a phone can create a barrier between people?
I can see that. You're trying to have a conversation with someone, and their phone is sitting right there on the table between you, screen glowing.
It's like a physical reminder that their attention is divided. And studies show it actually reduces cognitive function, even if the phone isn't actively being used.
Wow, so putting your phone away is like sending a signal that you're fully present and engaged in the conversation.
Exactly. Put those phones away, folks. Now, let's move on to something a little more uplifting. Smiles. But how can you tell a genuine smile from a fake one?
That's a good question. I've definitely perfected my fake it till you make it smile over the years.
We all have, but there's one type of smile that's the real deal, the Duchenne smile. It engages not just the corners of your mouth, but also the muscles around your eyes.
Ah, so that's why they call them laugh lines.
Exactly. Those little crinkles, or crow's feet, are a dead giveaway that someone is genuinely happy or amused.
Oh, have to pay more attention to that. Now, speaking of things that make us feel good, let's talk about laughter. Have you ever noticed how contagious it can be?
Oh, absolutely. You can't help but smile when you hear someone laughing, even if you have no idea what's so funny.
It triggers something instinctive in us. We're social creatures, and laughter is one of the ways we bond and connect with each other.
And it's not just about being funny. Shared laughter, even in response to a cheesy joke, can be a powerful indicator of connection and openness.
So that awkward silence after you tell a joke that bombs it's not all in your head,
Mm-hmm.
it might actually signal a lack of connection.
Yikes.
Hmm.
Maybe. So choose your jokes wisely. Now, let's move on to a part of our body that's often overlooked in the world of body language, our hands.
What, like hand gestures?
Not exactly. I'm talking about open palms. It might seem like a small detail, but showing your open palms can actually signal honesty, sincerity, and trustworthiness.
Interesting. So if I'm trying to build trust with someone, I should keep my hands visible.
It's not about waving your hands around like a crazy person, but yeah, open palms convey a sense of vulnerability, a lack of threat.
Whereas closed palms, hands, and pockets behind the back can seem more guarded, even if it's unintentional.
It all goes back to our primal instincts. For centuries, closed palms have been associated with potential danger. You couldn't see what someone was hiding if their hands weren't visible.
Makes you think twice about keeping your hands in your pockets.
Now, let's talk about a cue that I'm definitely guilty of, leaning in.
Oh, I do that too. When I'm engrossed in a conversation, I can't help but lean in like I'm trying to get closer to the words themselves.
It's a great way to show you're interested and attentive, but it's important to be aware of the other person's comfort level. Just because you're feeling the urge to lean in doesn't mean they are.
Good point. Boundaries are key.
Now, we can't talk about open body language without mentioning the power of touch.
Ah, yes, touch. It's such a powerful form of communication, but it's also tricky, right?
Absolutely. A hug from a close friend can be incredibly comforting, but an unwanted touch from a stranger can feel like a violation.
So context is everything.
When we talk about warm touch as an open cue, we're talking about those brief, appropriate touches that convey empathy and support, a pat on the back, a reassuring touch on the arm.
It's about strengthening that bond.
These small gestures release oxytocin, that feel-good hormone that promotes bonding and trust.
It's like a mini dose of social glue. But as you said, sensitivity is key. What flies in one culture or relationship might not in another.
Always read the room, and if you're ever unsure, err on the side of caution. Okay, so we've covered those green lights, the open body language cues. Now get ready to hit the brakes because we're moving into the yellow and red lights, those closed cues that suggest someone might be feeling uncomfortable, anxious, or wants to, wrap things up.
Right, got to read those signals.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about slapping labels on people or playing gotcha. Everyone's different.
It's about being observant,
Yeah.
right? Picking up on those subtle cues.
Exactly. So let's start with a body part we don't always think about: our feet. Ever noticed how people sit with their ankles crossed, like tucked under a chair?
Especially in those, formal settings, right?
Yeah.
Meetings, interviews.
It's a subtle sign, but it can indicate discomfort, anxiety, even a desire to withdraw, like they're trying to make themselves smaller, less visible.
Interesting. So the next time I'm in a meeting, I'll be sure to check out everyone's feet.
Just don't get caught staring at their feet. Now, let's move from feet to hands. We talked about the power of open palms, but what about clasped hands?
Oh, yeah. Like when someone's nervous or stressed, they clench their hands together.
It's a self-soothing gesture, seeking comfort. You'll see it in job interviews, presentations, even on first dates.
Definitely seen that on a few first dates. And speaking of first dates, what about when someone angles their body away from you, like a fencer? Blading, right?
Exactly. Like
Right.
they're creating a physical barrier, putting some distance between you. It's subtle, but it can be a sign they're not comfortable with the level of, intimacy.
Fascinating how our bodies react like that, even when we don't consciously tell them to.
It's all about those subconscious signals. Okay, let's talk thumbs.
Thumbs? What, like thumbs up, thumbs down?
Not quite. Think about when someone hides their thumbs in their pockets, behind their back, or clenched in a fist.
I didn't really notice that before.
It's subtle, but it can indicate a lack of confidence, some vulnerability. Confident people tend to keep those thumbs visible.
So if I want to project confidence, remember the thumbs.
Now, onto a cue I know I'm guilty of when I'm stressed: neck rubbing.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
That tension in your neck, you just have to rub it. Well, it turns out there's a scientific reason for that. We're stimulating the vagus nerve, which helps regulate heart rate, calming us down.
So it's not just a nervous habit, it's our body trying to chill out.
Exactly. And speaking of wanting to escape stressful situations, let's talk about physical retreat.
Like backing away slowly.
It can be as simple as taking a step back, leaning away, or angling your body so you're not directly facing someone.
Creating some space.
It's natural to want that space when you're feeling overwhelmed or just not wanting to engage.
Important to respect that.
Absolutely. Now, on to one of the most classic cues, crossed arms.
Ah, yes, the universal sign of do not enter.
It's a physical barrier. We feel closed off, unreceptive, maybe even a little hostile.
7 out of 10 people cross their left arm over their right. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. But either way, it's something to be aware of, especially if you're trying to build rapport.
Uncross those arms, folks. So what about hunched shoulders?
Another classic sign of insecurity or feeling overwhelmed. Remember that turtle retreating into its shell?
Makes sense.
We hunch our shoulders to create a barrier, even if we don't realize we're doing it. Good posture goes a long way.
So stand tall, shoulders back.
Huh?
Got it. What about eye rubbing? Is that always a sign of being tired, or is there more to it?
Well, sometimes our eyes are just itchy, but think about it. Someone asks this tough question, you're in a tense meeting, and bam, eye rubbing.
Like a visual reset.
Right. Blocking out information. It's like the visual equivalent of covering your ears.
Fascinating. And what about fidgeting?
We've all been there, right? Clicking a pen, tapping our feet. It's our body's way of releasing nervous energy, dealing with anxiety, boredom, even excitement.
It's like our internal engine is stuck in high gear.
And studies have shown that fidgeting increases tenfold in high-stress situations. So if you're on a job interview or about to give a big presentation, don't be surprised if you find yourself fidgeting more than usual.
It's like our bodies have a mind of their own.
Hmm.
What about ear touching? Sometimes I tuck my hair behind my ear. Is that a secret signal I'm giving off?
Well, it depends. It could be totally innocent, but ear touching, especially in response to a question or statement, can be a way of blocking out unwanted information. It's like we're trying to create a subtle barrier to protect ourselves. So if you're trying to have an open conversation and you see a lot of ear touching going on, it might be a sign to switch gears.
Good to know. We've covered a lot of ground here. Any final thoughts on closed body language before we move on?
Well, let's talk about a gesture that often gets misinterpreted: hands in pockets.
Ah, yes, the classic too cool for school pose.
It can come across that way, but it can also just be shyness, insecurity, or simply not feeling very social in that moment.
Makes you want to give those pocket hiders a high five and tell them it's okay to be awkward.
Exactly. And remember, hand gestures are a key part of communication. So when someone hides their hands, they're limiting their ability to connect. We've explored a whole bunch of closed body language cues from head to toe. It's really amazing how much we communicate without even realizing it.
Right. It's like having a secret decoder ring for human behavior. But we've got to be careful not to jump to conclusions.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because someone crosses their arms doesn't mean they're closed off, right?
Exactly. It's all about context. What's the situation? Who are they with? What else are their bodies saying? It's a process.
It's like learning a new language. You wouldn't expect to be fluent after just one lesson.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
It takes practice, observation, and being open to learning from our mistakes.
So as we wrap up, what's the key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with when it comes to understanding body language?
Well, it's not about memorizing a bunch of cues and analyzing every little movement someone makes.
Right, we don't want to be like those human lie detectors you see on TV, scrutinizing every blink and twitch. It's more about,
It's about developing a deeper understanding of communication in general, both the spoken and the unspoken. It's about becoming a better observer of human behavior.
and using those observations to connect more meaningfully with others.
Exactly. To navigate those social situations more effectively, to build stronger relationships, to communicate with more confidence and empathy.
I love that. So for our listeners who are eager to put these newfound skills to the test, what's one final thought-provoking question they can ask themselves?
The article focused on individual cues, right? But think about this. What happens when you start observing those unspoken dynamics between people?
Oh, I like where you're going with this.
Imagine you're watching a group of friends having dinner. Who's leaning in, who's mirroring whom, whose body language changes when a certain topic comes up.
It's like a whole new level of observation. You can learn so much about group dynamics just by paying attention to those nonverbal cues.
Exactly. It's like a silent play unfolding right before your eyes. And once you start noticing these things, you can't unsee them.
It's true. Suddenly you're more aware of the subtle ways we communicate, the power dynamics at play, the unspoken emotions simmering beneath the surface.
It's a whole new world of understanding human behavior.
So to our listeners, we encourage you. Keep exploring, keep observing, and remember every interaction is a chance to learn something new about yourself and the fascinating world of nonverbal communication.